Greetings, welcome to Facts About Everything. I'm your host, James Egan. Look, I'll level with you. I'll be talking about myths and legends about Ireland, but you're not going to care until I just talk about the leprechauns. I mean, chances are, but the second I stop talking about leprechauns, you're just going to click off the video, because nobody cares about any Irish mythology except them. Even though leprechauns aren't even a big part of mythology. It's just the one thing that foreign people seem to gravitate towards. I don't know why. People like leprechauns because they're fun and whimsical. No, they're not. They're horrible. There's a National Leprechaun Museum in Dublin. Because the stories about leprechauns are so disturbing, children aren't allowed into it. Loads of kids want to go there every day and like, no you can't, it's too disturbing. That's how freaky they are. The sad thing is, that film about the killer leprechaun is probably the most accurate depiction of one.
I want to go!
And that is the first fact about Irish mythology. Let's dive in. In Irish legends, leprechauns have been portrayed as pixies, sprites, and fairies. A leprechaun is usually depicted as a bearded dwarf with green clothes, a hat, and shorts. A leprechaun has a buckle on its hat, belt, and shoes. All leprechauns are male. Most Irish fairies are known as trooping fairies, which means they live in groups. However, leprechauns are solitary creatures. According to Mental Floss, leprechauns were evicted from the fairy colony, which caused them to become bitter and solitary. Leprechauns are rarely mentioned in Irish mythology, and they only became prominent over the past century. Their popularity soared after they appeared in the 1959 Disney film Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Leprechauns are related to other mischievous fairies like the Cuchulainn and the Far Darg. The Cuchulainn adores alcohol and tends to haunt wine cellars. Far Dargs are fairies with hairy skin, a snout, and a tail, which has left them with the unflattering nickname Rat Boys. These are much more sinister beings, as they tend to steal babies and switch them with shape-shifting fairies. Cluricauns and Far Dargs have been removed from many revised Irish stories and replaced with leprechauns to make the tales have more universal appeal. That's really disrespectful to our heritage. That's like trying to tell a story about some historic figure and the kid's not interested, and you go, okay, it wasn't Napoleon Bonaparte, it was Harry Potter. Leprechauns are exceptional cobblers and make shoes for all fairies. The word leprechaun is derived from the ecclesiastical Latin words Leith Brogue, which means half brogue. If captured by a human, the leprechaun grants 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. However, if you look away from leprechaun for even a second, it will disappear. In one story, a man caught a leprechaun and demanded its treasure. The trickster pointed to a tree, stating his gold was buried underneath. The man tied a red scarf around the tree's branch and ran home to get a shovel. When he returned, the man saw that every tree in the forest had a red scarf on its branch. The first reference to leprechauns was in the medieval story Adventure of Fergus, son of Leti. In the tale, King Fergus falls asleep on a beach and wakes up to see 3 leprechauns dragging him into the sea. He captures one and it pleads for Fergus to release him in exchange for 3 wishes. In medieval folklore, leprechauns wore red clothes and a cocked hat. According to the chairman of English literature at the University of Missouri, David Russell McNally, a leprechaun is the child of an evil spirit and a degenerate fairy, which is why it is not wholly good nor wholly evil. One of the main reasons that leprechauns are depicted as evil is because people only want to catch them for their gold. Leprechauns will reward humans that show them kindness. One story tells of a nobleman whose castle began to crumble. Shortly after, he came across a leprechaun and gave him a ride on his horse. When the man returned home, he found that his castle was filled to the ceiling with gold. In March, many people in Ireland dressed as leprechauns while performing marathons. I have never seen that happen in my entire life. In 1989, PJ O'Hare was tending his garden when he heard a scream near Foy Mountain in the Mourne mountain range. As he ran toward it, O'Hare found bones, 4 gold coins, and a tiny suit near scorched earth. These items are believed to be the remains of a leprechaun. They are now displayed behind a glass case at his pub, PJ O'Hare's Bar in Carlington in Louth. After PJ O'Hare's Bar became popular, O'Hare began a tradition of hiding 100 ceramic leprechauns for customers to hunt. Each participant needs to buy a hunter's license, no really, and is given whiskey to encourage the leprechauns to come out. PJ O'Hare's friend, Kevin McCulty Woods, had no belief in leprechauns and assumed O'Hare invented the story just to make money. Ironically, McCulty claims to have encountered a leprechaun years later, and he became the biggest advocate of the mystical creatures. How passionate is McCulty? He claims to have met a leprechaun called Carrig, who declares he was the leader of the 236 leprechauns that live in Ireland. It gets weirder. McCulty was so insistent that this happened, he had the leprechauns protected by the European Union under a European Habitats Directive in 2009. I don't mean he tried to, he succeeded. Leprechauns are a protected species in Ireland by the EU, even though they don't exist. The most iconic leprechaun image today is the mascot of the Lucky Charms cereal. The cereal was made in 1964. Although it's hugely popular in the United States and Canada, it does not sell well in Ireland. I have personally never seen a person in Ireland ever eat that cereal. The Boston Celtics mascot is Lucky the Leprechaun. The film Leprechaun was released in 1993. Warwick Davis plays a murderous leprechaun who is desperately trying to reclaim his gold. He is defeated when a child shoots a shamrock into his throat with a slingshot. The film did well, somehow, so it spawned 5 sequels, including Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, spelled like that, and Leprechaun in Space. Despite the fact the world obsesses about leprechauns, Ireland has a huge amount of mythology that the rest of the world is oblivious to. Although everyone has some familiarity with Greek and Roman mythical creatures, few are aware of Irish fables. But our mythical creatures aren't like the Cyclops, the Hydra, the Gorgon. We got monsters like the Aratak, which is a zombie dwarf that sucks blood and can only be defeated if he's buried upside down. Although it sounds like the stupidest idea ever, the Aratak directly inspired Dracula. One of Ireland's most popular legends is the Salmon of Knowledge. A poet called Finnegas desperately sought to catch a magical salmon. The first person to eat the salmon's flesh would gain all the world's knowledge. After fishing for 7 years, Finnegas caught the legendary salmon and gave it to his servant, Fionn McCool, to cook. While cooking the salmon, Fionn touched the fish to see if it was ready. The salmon was so hot, Fionn burnt his thumb. When Fionn sucked his finger to ease the pain, he accidentally absorbed the salmon's power. When Finnegas saw Fionn, he noticed that the boy's eyes were filled with wisdom. Realizing that Fionn ate some of the salmon, Finnegas allowed the boy to eat the rest of the fish to obtain all its knowledge. Throughout his life, Fionn could call upon the wisdom of the world simply by biting his thumb. Fionn went on to become one of the greatest heroes in Irish mythology. Not the greatest though, because the greatest Irish mythical hero is Cuchulainn. He is basically the Irish equivalent of the Roman demigod Hercules or the Greek warrior Odysseus. Cuchulainn was the son of the harvest god Lugh. Cuchulainn's birth name was Setanta. His nickname Cuchulainn means the Hound of Cuchulainn. At the age of 17, Cuchulainn single-handedly protected Ulster from the armies of Queen Maeve of Connacht. Cuchulainn could defeat an entire army by going into a berserker rage known as the Ristrad, which means wasp spasm. Legend states that Cuchulainn invented the sport of hurling, which is probably not true because he didn't exist. Cuchulainn died after being poisoned by an arrow during battle. Realizing that he was fatally ill, Cuchulainn tied himself to a tall rock so he could die standing up facing his enemies. There is a famous sculpture depicting this called the Dying Cuchulainn at the GPO in Dublin. In German folklore, a doppelganger is a being that looks exactly like another living person. If a person sees his own doppelganger, he will be cursed. Although the doppelganger is a part of Irish myth, it is known as a fetch. During the 6th century, a sea monster called Cuchulainn was said to swim in Loch Swilly in Donegal until it was killed by St. Columba. Though Morrigan was the queen of phantoms in Irish mythology, she often appears as a crow on battlefields to rouse warriors to fight her enemies. Some perceive her as the goddess of war. The Irish god of the sea is Manann. He rode a sea chariot called the Wave Sweeper. This chariot was pulled by an Ainvar, a horse that could gallop over water. The Isle of Man is derived from his name. The horse eel, also known by the equally uncreative name the eel horse, is a mythical sea serpent with a mane. In Irish myth, there is a killer horse called the Aoife that resides in Connemara. It is said to feed on people in churchyards. Okay, the Irish are obsessed with horse myths because there's another fable called the water horse. It lives in the sea but ventures on land to devour humans. The Slua are the ghosts of sinners who are banished from heaven and hell. They fly through the sky, collecting the souls of the dead, preventing them from entering the afterlife. Wow, that sounds like an absolutely petrifying idea. They should make a movie about that. Ireland has her own version of the Loch Ness Monster, the Loch Ree Monster in Westmeath. The cryptozoological creature was first reported by 3 priests on May 18th, 1960. Fairies are a huge part of Irish mythology. The Irish refer to them as Aes See, which means people of the mound. In Ireland, it is believed that a person will be cursed with bad luck if he or she disturbs a fairy's home, a circular formation of rocks called a fairy ring. These rings can be found all around Ireland. Although this sounds like a dated superstition, some Irish people take these really seriously. In 1999, a plan for a bypass in Southern Ireland was altered because it would have interfered with a war rallying point for fairies from the province of Munster. This delayed the construction of the bypass for over a decade. Imagine if a building was delayed for 10 years in America because somebody said that there was a minotaur nearby. That's how ridiculous this is. Although mermaids are a part of Irish mythology, they are known as merrows, which means sea maids. Merrows have green hair, webbed fingers, and egg-white skin. Although a merrow looks very similar to a conventional mermaid, a merrow can shed her scales and live a normal life on land. A merrow does this when she falls in love with a man. However, the merrow will inevitably return to the waters, abandoning her family. They have a magical cap called a Cuchulainn, which means little magic hood. This cap allows them to dive beneath the waves. If the merrow loses it, she will not be able to live in the sea. A Selkie is a mythical creature in Ireland, Iceland, and Scotland. Although it looks like a seal, it can shed its skin and take the form of a human. If a man takes its shed skin, he must marry the Selkie. One of the most iconic Celtic myths is the puka, which means ghost in Ireland. Pukas are shapeshifters that take the form of a creature with dark fur like a goat, cat, dog, or hare. It normally takes the form of a sleek black horse with glowing eyes. A puka can be a bringer of good and bad fortune. If a person bumps into one, they can never tell if the puka will help or hinder them with their problems. In the classic film Harvey, the titular character is referred to as a puka. One of the most famous Irish myths is the Children of Lir. It revolves around Lir's children, Fionnuala, Aed, Fiachra, and Con. When the mother Aoife died, Lir married a witch called Aoife. When Aoife saw that Lir loved their children more than her, she turned them into swans. When the king Bodb heard about this, he turned Aoife into an air demon for all eternity. To break the spell, the children had to spend 300 years on Loch Derravarach, 300 years in the Sea of Moyle, and 300 years in Iris Domnan. After this, they would need to be blessed to revert to human form. After spending 900 years in the Three Lakes, they were blessed by a monk called Mecquevach. Although they reverted to human, they had aged 900 years and so died almost instantly. The monk buried them and they were reunited with their parents in heaven. The most infamous ghost in Irish folklore is the Banshee, which means woman of the fairies. This elderly ghost woman screams during the dead of night to herald the death of a significant person or family member. King James I of England was said to have heard the wail of the Banshee just before his own demise. This wail is so piercing it can shatter glass. The character became a part of pop culture when she appeared in the film that I've already mentioned, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Which I must add, the nostalgia critic on YouTube said that is the scariest thing he's seen in a movie ever. According to the Dictionary of Celtic Mythology, the Queen of the Fairies, Una, resides in Loch Ree Monster. She had a golden hair that touches the ground, and she was known as the most beautiful woman in Ireland. In the video game series The Legend of Zelda, the main character rides a horse called Epona. The horse is named after the Irish goddess of horses and fertility. In my St. Patrick's video, I talked about how St. Patrick spread Christianity to Ireland. Now let's look at what the Irish used to believe in before St. Patrick came to Ireland. Originally, the Irish worshipped the Tuatha De Danann, which means the tribe of the gods. Some Christian monks believe the Tuatha were fallen angels. Leprechauns are believed to be descendants of the Tuatha De Danann. Although the Tuatha De Danann lived in a realm of permanent youth, beauty, and joy called Otherworld, they crossed into the mortal world to protect humanity from the beast of chaos, the Fomorians. The Fomorians are subterranean giants that represent the destructive power of nature. Their leader, Balor the Blight God, was a giant with a massive eye in his forehead that caused devastation when opened. Elements of the Tuatha De Danann were incorporated into the film Hellboy 2. The final battle takes place underneath Ireland against a mystical entity called Nuada, who is the son of King Balor. Otherworld is the name of the Celts' afterlife. It was divided into several mystical kingdoms, including Tir na Nog, the land of the young, Mag Mell, the plain of honey, and Tir Tengair, the promised land. These kingdoms were interwoven so a person can be connected to each one simultaneously. Basically, the Irish dead live in three heavens at the same time. The demon bride is a spectre that looms around funerals. If the last person to leave the funeral is a young man, she will try to court him. She will ask for a kiss as a vow that he will see her again. The kiss will sell his soul to the devil. In Irish folklore, a beautiful maiden fell in love with a local boy and they prepared to elope. When the maiden's father found out, he forced his daughter to marry a wealthy chieftain. After being routinely abused by her husband, the maiden died of a broken heart. She rose from her grave and became known as Darg Du, which means red thirst. When she tracked her father down, he was busy counting the money he sold her for. She sucked the air out of his body until he died. She then tracked down her husband and sucked the air and blood from his body. In folklore, she continues to roam through Ireland during the night, preparing to suck the life out of abusive men. And finally, The most famous version of the Headless Horseman folktale is Washington Irving's 1820 short story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Irish version is called Dullahan. The Dullahan carries a whip made from a human spine. The Dullahan rides on horseback holding his own head high enough so it can be seen from a great distance. If the Dullahan calls out a person's name, that person will instantly die. If anyone were to look at the Dullahan, the creature will hurl blood upon them to warn them they will be next to die. The Headless Horseman's only weakness is gold. The smallest amount of gold will chase him away for the night. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe. Although this is the end of Irish Month, I will still talk about Ireland if the demand is high enough, so if there is any other aspects you want me to talk about Ireland, let me know and I'll upload a video as soon as possible. To learn more facts, check out my books. They're available on Amazon on paperback and Kindle. Thanks for watching, see you again.